Welcome to BD Deep Dive, where ideas go deeper. Today we are opening a deceptively small time capsule, the floppy disk. It looks harmless, almost cute, like a coaster with a memory problem. But inside are drafts, art, software, letters, records, and sometimes entire lives balanced against bit rot, missing hardware, and digital amnesia.
And the funny part is, this is not just a retro computing hobby where someone lovingly dusts off beige plastic and says, they do not make them like this anymore. It is closer to an emergency room. The patient is decades old, the chart is missing, and the operating tools may also be antiques.
The core idea is simple but brutal. Floppy preservation is not nostalgia. It is a time-sensitive rescue mission. Because digital information is never purely digital. It always needs physical matter, whether that is magnetic particles on a disk, flash cells in a phone, or hard drives humming in a data center.
That is the sneaky lesson. We talk about files like they are ghosts floating in the ether, but they are more like messages written on bananas. Some floppy disks were designed for just 3 to 5 years of use, and now we are asking them to perform archaeological miracles after 40.
This creates the looming digital dark age. Early digital history is becoming unreadable, not because nobody cares, but because media decay and hardware loss are converging. Archives may hold early drafts, artworks, software, organizational records, and personal correspondence, yet the ability to read them is vanishing.
The estimate that 20 to 50% of disks from the 80s and 90s have already failed is the archival equivalent of hearing the ice crack under your feet. Every delay means more missing sectors, more dead drives, and more people saying, I am sure we had that file somewhere.
So why do floppies fail? First, their magnetic charge weakens over decades, like a whisper fading in a crowded room. Then the binder materials can break down, especially with humidity. Add mold, which can feed on organic compounds in the disk, and suddenly your storage medium has become a tiny buffet.
And the scary part is how mechanical the danger is. A dirty or damaged disk surface can meet a drive head, scrape, and destroy data instantly. If the ideal archival life is often cited around 10 to 20 years, then many collections are not aging gracefully. They are doing stunt work without insurance.
That is why the worst instinct is to just plug it in and hope. Vintage drives can damage fragile disks, mold can contaminate the drive head, and bad sectors can stop standard controllers cold. Archivists treat disks like artifacts first, and storage devices second.
Exactly. Before reading, they inspect, clean, document, and choose the safest approach. It is like finding an old cassette from your grandparents and not immediately jamming it into the crustiest tape deck in the garage. The goal is to get one good rescue attempt, not a dramatic crunching sound.
Now we get to the magic trick, Flux-Level Imaging. A floppy drive does not really see files first. It senses analog magnetic changes as the disk spins. Flux tools capture the raw timing of those transitions, below the operating system and below the neat little folder icons we are used to.
So instead of asking the disk, please hand me the files, Flux Imaging says, tell me every tiny magnetic twitch you can still remember. That raw capture becomes a fingerprint of the disk surface. Later, software can interpret it, reinterpret it, or rescue meaning as better tools appear.
Those magnetic pulses still need translation. Older FM encoding was robust but inefficient, while MFM doubled capacity by using tighter timing. Software reconstructs bits from intervals, often reading patterns that standard systems no longer understand. It is part electrical engineering, part cryptic crossword.
And the timing matters at tiny scales. MFM double-density intervals may fall around 4, 6, or 8 microseconds. That is not a file name. That is the heartbeat underneath the file system. If you can preserve that heartbeat, you have a fighting chance across many formats.
The hardware stack exists because modern PCs mostly forgot how to speak floppy. They lack native interfaces for old drives, so USB flux boards act as translators. They control motors, move heads, step tracks, and capture the signal beneath the file system layer.
It is like hiring a bilingual tour guide for a very elderly machine. The old drive still spins the disk, but the modern board listens more carefully than a normal controller. Instead of demanding perfect sectors, it records the messy reality, which is often where the historical value lives.
Several tools define the field. Cryoflux is common in institutions, but closed. Greaseweasel is open, inexpensive, and customizable. Applesauce is strong for Apple formats. Flux Engine and SuperCard Pro serve niche workflows. The toolbox depends on the disk, the archive, and the philosophy.
I like that this is not one heroic gadget saving civilization. It is an ecosystem. Institutions, hobbyists, open-source developers, format experts, and people with suspiciously organized boxes of cables. Preservation often advances because someone says, wait, I know exactly which weird adapter that needs.
Then comes a philosophical split. Curated golden images versus open raw preservation. Some approaches favor proprietary IPF files that represent carefully verified disks. Open communities often prefer RAW or SCP Flux because raw flux preserves physical anomalies, layout details, and weirdness that binary images erase.
A binary disk image can be useful, but it may flatten the artifact into only the polite parts. Raw flux keeps the scuffs, timing oddities, and strange geometry. It is the difference between a typed transcript of a diary and the diary itself, coffee stains included.
Copy protection turns this into a preservation puzzle. Developers in the 80s weaponized disk geometry. Odd tracks, strange sectors, fuzzy bits, and mixed bit rates designed to confuse ordinary copying. Those tricks were anti-piracy then, but now they can block legitimate archival recovery.
It is deliciously ironic. The old locks meant to stop duplication can also stop history from remembering the software at all. Microsoft Adventure used early physical copy protection in 1979, and that kind of intentional weirdness is exactly why capturing the raw physical signal matters.
The stakes become real in case studies. Cambridge recovered disks connected to Stephen Hawking, containing lectures, letters, tools, and games. That is not merely data recovery. It is recovering context, habits, intellectual traces, and the texture of how a person worked.
And public access matters too. The Internet Archive makes old software playable, while preservation events show demand beyond universities and museums. People want to experience early software, not just read a plaque saying, once there was a spreadsheet, and it was beige.
One twist is that floppies were not just museum objects. U.S. nuclear systems used 8-inch disks until 2019. Boeing 747 update workflows used floppies into 2020. Japan only ended floppy-related administrative rules in 2024. Some transit infrastructure may keep relying on them for years.
That sounds absurd until you remember how infrastructure works. If a system is stable, certified, and expensive to replace, it can outlive fashion, common sense, and 3 generations of office printers. The floppy becomes less a relic and more a stubborn little cog in a very large machine.
The bigger warning is that the cloud is physical too. Data needs carriers and interpreters. Today's platforms may become tomorrow's unreadable formats, locked accounts, broken APIs, abandoned apps, or encrypted blobs with no living key. Preservation is not a product feature. It is ongoing care.
That is what makes floppies such a useful warning label. They show us that saved does not mean safe. Without documentation, migration, open tools, and people who understand the layers, a file can be technically present and practically gone, like a locked treasure chest at the bottom of a lake.
So the takeaways are sharp. Floppies are failing faster than they can be read. Flux-Level Imaging is one of the best rescue techniques because it captures the magnetic evidence before interpretation. Open tools are widening access, and copy protection makes raw physical capture essential.
And the final lesson is bigger than the floppy itself. Tomorrow's forgotten media may be today's cloud, app, or platform. If we want memory to last, we need more than storage. We need stewardship. Thanks for joining BD Deep Dive, and maybe check that mystery disk drawer before it becomes archaeology.